this way out west to try to find someone to take us in. As you know, we're going to be talking about the orphan trains. And the story ends in Pueblo in a very special way. Let's go back about 150, 60 years to the early 1850s and take a look what was happening in our country back then. This was kind of the beginning of some really mass immigration movements throughout. Many people coming into places like New York City, most of them coming, of course, back then by ship. And they were told that America was the land of opportunity and there were going to be plenty of jobs and things were going to be much better for them because that's why they wanted to leave. You know, the potato famine was going on in Ireland and various countries were having a hard time. Well, what happened was there were so many people coming. Come right in, we just started. There were so many people coming that sometimes the ships couldn't unload the passengers for 2 or 3 days. And can you imagine coming over on maybe a really rugged trip, taking several weeks, and then having to sit out in the harbor and wait to get off the ship? Well, what happened was there was a shortage of places to stay, and families had to double up. Maybe your family might have to double up with your family, and in situations like that, of course, diseases are rampant. We have things like scarlet fever and tuberculosis and influenza, and the job situation. The jobs were all pretty much taken up. And the bottom line was families could not take care of their children. And there were thousands of children out on the streets begging. I have stolen from the poor box and I've begged the city streets. I've swapped the bars and pool rooms for a little bite to eat. In my daddy's old green jacket and these rags upon my feet, I am looking for someone to take me in. Take me in. I have rode the orphan train. Take me in. I need a home. I need a name. Take me in. Won't you be my kin? I am looking for someone to take me in. Yes, there were probably 20, 30,000 children out rummaging through garbage and things to survive. And one man by the name of Reverend Charles Brace, a Methodist minister, saw all this. And in fact, he was accosted a number of times, and so he knew how serious this was. He got together with several businessmen, friends of his, and he said, we've got to do something about this. We just cannot allow these children to be out there. And so they bought some old abandoned buildings, probably old warehouses, on 23rd Street in New York City, converted them somewhat so that they could bring in as many as 500 children at a time and get them off the streets. Now, if you were lucky, you might have a cot to sleep on. Otherwise, you might have just a spot on the floor somewhere. And the meals, well, probably a cold bowl of cereal for breakfast, maybe a bowl of soup for lunch, and maybe another bowl of soup for dinner. But don't you agree that would be better than begging on the streets? Yes. Now, this just shows you the influence of one person. And I want the young people in the audience to remember this especially. You can make a difference, because what happened was he saw that the trains, the whole rail system was now moving westward. And he said, why can't we put these children on trains that are coming west? Because probably there are farmers that could use help, and these children could be taken in and given a home and work for their sustenance. And so that's what started to happen. And now I want to tell you my story. I'm Stanley. Once I had a darling mother, though I can't recall her name. I had a baby brother who I'll never see again. The children's home is sending us out on the orphan train to try to find someone to take us in. Take us in. We have rode the orphan train. Take us in. We need a home. We need a name. Take us in. Won't you be our king? We are looking for someone to take us in. My daddy, we called him Daddy Floyd, came back from World War I, and he was very badly injured. He had a place on his leg that wouldn't heal right. He had trouble breathing because of all the gases and things that had been a part of the war effort. And so at best, he could only hold down about a half-time job. And then he was in and out of veterans' hospitals. Well, he met a very nice lady. They got married, and she became our mother, Mommy Lottie. I was born in 1920, and my brother Victor came along 2 years later in 1922. And several years after that, my baby sister came. But you know what I remember about my mother? She was always in bed, sick. And when my baby sister was 6 months old, she died. She died of TB, tuberculosis, the lung disease. What was poor Daddy going to do? He could hardly take care of himself. Now he's lost his wife, and he has these 3 little children. Well, he had a sister that lived in upstate New York. So he went to her and he said, "Can you take the children?" And she said, "Well, you know, we already have 4 of our own, and I'm not in very good health, but I'll try." And she did try. But a short time after that, she came back and she said, "I just can't take care of 7 children. I'll tell you what, I'll take the baby, but you're going to have to make other arrangements for the boys." Well, about the same time, in the state of New York, they passed an ordinance which said you were considered an orphan if, first of all, you had lost both of your parents, or if you had lost one parent and the other one couldn't adequately take care of you. So the next thing I remember, 2 very nice ladies pulled up in a big car in front of the place that we were staying, and they said, "We're going to take you boys to the children's home on 23rd Street. I will never forget the look on my daddy's face. He was leaning up against this railing where we were staying. He had a big handkerchief in front of his face. Tears were streaming down, and he was waving goodbye to us. We didn't know whether we'd ever see him again. And you know, that wasn't the worst of it. We got to the children's home, and Victor and I were separated. They put the little ones in one building, I was in another, the older kids in another building, and the only time I would see him would be on a sunny day out on the playground, and we were separated by a chain link fence, and I never could get close to him. And sometimes when I'd see him, he might have a black eye or bloody nose, because children in situations like this have a hard time. Well, we were at the children's home under these circumstances. I don't know how long, it seemed like forever. When the children's home, they gathered us, me and all the rest. They taught us to sit quietly until the food was blessed. Then they put us on the orphan train to send us way out west to try to find someone to take us in. Take us in. We have rode the orphan train. Take us in. We need a home. We need a name. Take us in. Won't you be our kin? We are looking for someone to take us in. Well, let me tell you about the train ride. the first train ride, there were 80 of us in 2 cars. And we started out from New York City and started across the heartland of our country, that upper black line. Now, Daddy had another sister in Coffeyville, Kansas. And Victor and I were a couple of the youngest on the train. I was 6 and he was 4 and a half. And we rode to Wellington, to Coffeyville, Kansas, and his family met us and took us in. But the next thing I remember, we're back on a train coming back to New York City to the children's home. I don't know what happened. Now we're back at the children's home. Another very, very sad day, as you can well imagine. Fortunately, we weren't there too long when they put us on a second train. Now it's winter, it's December, and it's cold. And we started again from New York City, and we went down through the south and eastern part of our country. And Victor and I rode the train for 10 days. Now let me tell you what happens when you would ride the train. The train had to stop for fuel and water about every 30 miles, and often there was a train station and a platform around. And so the train would pull in, and the farmers would have gotten a notice that the train was coming, and they knew that they could possibly, come and look over the children. But before they let us get off, they had us put on our good set of clothes, and they scrubbed our faces. Now, why do you suppose they scrubbed our faces? Do you have any idea? So we looked. That's right. And part also because it was a coal-fired train, and so there was a lot of coal dust. And yes, but it was a combination of things. So we rode this train for 10 days, and as I said, there were 300 children on this train. Well, by the time we got to Wellington, Texas, there were still 50 of us left. And because it was cold, they made some other arrangements. But the farmers and their families came from miles around. They put us on the platform of the station in each town. And one by one we parted like a living lost and found. And one by one we all were taken in. Take us in. We have rode the orphan train. Take us in. We need our home. We need an inn. Take us in. Won't you be our king? We are looking for someone to take us in. So because it was winter, they brought us into the Wellington Hotel, and we the 50 of us lined up in there. And Victor and I are down here on the end, and he's hanging on to me for dear life, and he's just shaking. We had seen other families get divided up on this 10 days that we were riding, brothers and sisters separated, tears, all kinds of things, never perhaps to see one another again. Very, very stressful. Well, Mr. Deisier, a farmer, and his friend were in town that day. And the friend said, "You've been talking about needing some help out on the farm. Let's go over and see what children came in on the train." So here we are standing down here, and Mr. Deisier comes down, and he stands in front of me, and he says, "Young man, do you like cats and dogs?" I said, "Yes," because I was really afraid too. Didn't know how to answer. And he said, "Well, would you like a place to run and play, and fresh air and good farm food, and lots of other animals to look after?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, why don't you come home and live with us?" I looked at him and I said, "Only if you take my little brother too." And he kind of, okay. So he takes each of us by an arm, and he goes over and he signs some papers that say it's all right for him to take us home. he said, okay, boys, he said, I've got an old truck. He said, don't have any heat in it, but I've got some blankets in the back. He said, you'll be comfortable back there. It's only about 18 miles out to the farm, and I think you'll be all right. Now, remember this. My wife, Thelma, and my two daughters, I have a 14-year-old daughter, Eileen, and another daughter, Karen. They don't know you're coming home to live with us. So let's see how this plays out. So when we get out to the farm, you stay quietly under the blankets, and I'll go in and get the girls, and let's see what happens. So he said, I want to, you boys get settled. I want to go get something. So he was off for a couple minutes, and he came back, and what did he have? A bag of what? Jelly beans. He said, you boys can eat those jelly beans on the way out to the farm. Well, you better believe we ate those jelly beans. We didn't know. We'd been back and forth different places. We didn't know whether we were going to be staying at this farmhouse or not. But we got to the farm, and he goes in to get the girls. And out they come. I don't know whether they thought they were coming out for the groceries or just what. But they see there's something other than, they see movement under the blankets, and they throw them off, and they, oh my goodness, they picked us up, and they carried us in, and they're laughing, and they're talking, and they're saying, you talk funny. Well, we were from New York City, and now we're in Texas. And there's a little difference between how people talk in those two places. So they brought us in, and this began a wonderful, wonderful life for us. It was close to Christmas, and they bought a little red coaster wagon for me to pull Victor around, and Mrs. Deeser was a wonderful cook. She was also a very sharp, smart lady. She said, now look, we are now a family of 6, and we all have responsibilities, and you boys are going to have jobs to do. Victor, you can go get the chicken eggs. And Stanley, you can help feed the animals. And we have a 5-acre garden that we have to take care of once the spring weather comes. And if any of you have taken care of a garden, you know it's a lot of work, right? And of course, you'll be going to school. The school's down the road a ways. And if you get your work done during the week, you'll have time on the weekends. We'll have fun. So many Saturdays, you want to guess what we did in the little town of Wellington? Not too much going on in Wellington, but there was a movie theater, and we went to a lot of movies. They gave, I want to guess how much a movie cost back then?
5 cents.
Actually, it was 10. They gave us 15 cents. So that gave us 10 cents for the movie and 5 cents for popcorn or something to drink or whatever. And so we did go to a lot of movies. And then on Sundays we came back in and went to church as a family. And life went along, you know, pretty peacefully. We were in school, and the Deesers were very, very, very devoted family. Oh, I have to tell you a little thing. That first night, the girls had been, each had their own bedroom. Well, now they had to share a room, but Victor and I loved the fact that we got to share a room, because now we were together, and you know how you get ready to go to sleep at night and you kind of like to talk to somebody about the day. Oh, we thought it was wonderful. But Mrs. Deeser said to her husband that night or the next night, she said, you know, I was kind of hoping you'd bring home a sewing machine for me. And instead, you brought home Victor and Stanley. So, but it worked out. And I tried to be a good student and do my best. Although I was a typical boy, in high school I almost blew my ear off in a chemistry experiment. And another time, when the Mom and Pa Deeser were gone, I prevailed upon my sister to let me drive the tractor Well, I drove it right into the back end of the barn, and that didn't go over very well. So, you know, we were normal. And then when it was time, while I was in high school, we were experiencing the Dust Bowl. And I remember that distinctly because there was a fence that I needed to walk along in order to get to school. And the only way I knew that fence was there was I had a long stake, and I was able to feel the fence with my stake to get to school. That's how bad the dust was. But came time for me to finish high school, and I had been a good student, and so I was offered 4 different scholarships to different schools around Texas. I decided on one of them and went away. But can you imagine what the hardest thing was about me leaving? What's that? Leaving my brother and the Deisers, right. But I was gone for a year, and then World War II started. And I decided I was going to enlist in the Army. And at that same time, Victor decided, being several years younger, he decided to enlist in the Air Force. So once again, we both went away, and it was. I had a very, contrary to my father's experiences in the military, I had some interesting jobs. Got to meet some of the entertainment, like Bob Hope and those people as they came. I got to chauffeur some of them around different places. So I had a really very good experience. Well, then at the end of World War II, in the fall of 1945, I wanted to come where? Where do you suppose I wanted to come first? Back home. So I hopped on a bus, and I came back to Wellington to be with Mom and Pa Deiser. And then I found out that Victor was being discharged from the Air Force in Grand Island, Nebraska. So I hopped on another bus and went to Grand Island, and we had a reunion. And then we wanted to find our sister. We hadn't seen her since she was a little baby. We found out she was working in a bank in Cleveland, Ohio. So the 2 of us got on a bus and went to Cleveland and visited with her. Now, trying to find our Daddy Floyd was another thing. We actually had to get the FBI to help us. It was a really difficult assignment, but we were determined that we were going to find him. He was still in New York City, but his life hadn't gotten any better. And you know, we're so glad that we went to visit him, because shortly after that, he passed away. Well, now, what are Victor and I going to do now that we're growing up? Well, Victor decided he wanted to become a projectionist. What's a projectionist? Anybody know back there? Theater, have responsibilities in a movie theater. So to this day, he is still up in Moscow, Idaho, which is where he went to work in the theater business and buy into movie theaters and so on. Well, I decided I wanted to become a watchmaker. I wanted to take the apprentice course to become a watchmaker. So I went off to school in Kansas City. And then when I finished, the railroads were looking for a timekeeper in Dodge City, Kansas. So I moved to Dodge and was eating most of my meals at this same restaurant, and I met a very nice waitress, and over a period of time we decided that we were going to elope, and we did. And then we adopted a boy named Dennis, and we adopted another boy named Dana, and then we had our own little baby girl named Denise. And all this time we're moving around Kansas. We bought a jewelry shop in one place and another and another. And then we were up in Fort Collins, and Armstrong Jewelers in Pueblo, Colorado was looking for somebody to help out in their watch department. So we came to Pueblo. And then Cruz Begg's department store right across the street had their own little jewelry shop, if any of you remember back then, and we came I went to work over there. This is before some of your times. Cruz Biggs then became ultimately Dillard's. Jocelyn's and then Dillard's. I decided that I wanted to have my own watch repair business. So I made arrangements for some space in the Colorado building, downtown Pueblo, and I even repaired Timex watches. A lot of people said, oh, we don't want to repair Timex watches, they're not worth repairing. But I wanted to do that for people. In the meantime, my wife, who had been a waitress way back when, decided she wanted to run a little restaurant. So they started the City Diner on Santa Fe. Anybody remember the City Diner? Some of you who have been here a while will probably remember. And then I decided it was probably time for me to officially retire. So I came over to the City Diner and I was the official greeter. And then I decided that was probably enough. So now there's many a fine doctor and teacher in your school, many a fine teacher who can teach the golden rule, whose life began an orphan sleeping in the freezing rain, whose life began out on the orphan train. Take us in, we have rode the orphan train. Take us in, we need a home, we need a name. Take us in, won't you be our king? We are looking for someone to take us in. And that's Stanley's story.